Hi, my name's Laura, compulsive eater. My abstinence date is the 9th of the 9th, 2025, and one day at a time I am privileged to choose three weighed and measured meals from the Cambridge GreySheets. I write those meals down and gratefully call them in on time to a qualified GSA sponsor. By grace and by choice, I eat exactly what I committed and nothing else, no matter what. If I make a mistake, I make a call, and meticulous abstinence is the most important thing in my life today because it gives me a chance of having a life worth living. Yeah, thank you. I am here. I'm back. I've just passed my 90 days on Sunday, which it feels like an achievement, but it wasn't quite as exciting as it was the first time around. So for those that don't know, I came into GreySheet in June of 2022, was abstinent for nearly 2 years, and then broke my abstinence, spent 8 months trying to get my abstinence back, and then left program completely and had 8 months out of program, and then came back, and I've been abstinent since I came back. And I am definitely a compulsive eater. I have an extensive family history of other people who have this disease of addiction and compulsion. My dad died at age 54 of his second heart attack. He was also an alcoholic and he was morbidly obese when he died. His father died at exactly the same age, also from his second heart attack. So it's like a very strong family pattern there. My dad's mother died of a pulmonary embolism in her 50s. She was obese and an alcoholic. My mother had a pulmonary embolism when she was 60, which very nearly killed her, and she's also obese, but not an alcoholic. And my aunt, my dad's sister, died when she was 44, the same age that I am now. She was obese, not an alcoholic. So yeah, this is a very deadly and serious disease, and I feel like I've been living on borrowed time for a really long time. And my dad, I believe, suffered from bipolar disorder, although he wasn't diagnosed with it, and I don't think it was as well known in his lifetime. But from looking at his life, it makes sense to me that that's probably what he was suffering with, and that he self-medicated with alcohol. My mum self-medicated with food. They both had very troubling childhoods. Neither of them wanted children. I was an accident, and my mum decided to keep me even though my dad didn't want me. But because both of them were very unwell and troubled people, my childhood was not a healthy one. And I turned to food very early on as my source of comfort. And as a result, I put weight on very early on, and my mother always used food as like a comforting thing. It was her way of showing love, was through food. So I was obese from as far back as I can remember, and I was extensively bullied throughout school due to my obesity, and I managed to inherit both my mother's autism and my dad's bipolar. So I've got like the jackpot for all of the family's weird and wonderful health issues. And until 20 years old, I couldn't look another human being in the eye. I kept giving me hearing tests at school because I didn't engage with people and they thought I must be deaf, but they just didn't understand how girls with autism kind of presented themselves. So yeah, food was like my everything through childhood. I was so miserable and depressed and self-conscious, and just food was my life support system. And it was just me and food. It was my best friend. But at age 10, I was 10 stone, and I had a varicose vein in my leg. And I've never heard of a child having a varicose vein. And a teacher told me that I was like a middle-aged woman in a child's sign of like a little body, but I couldn't fit myself into my little body. So yeah, I started having the health consequences of my food addiction really early. And I also went on my first diet when I was age 10, and I have never stopped dieting since then. It's just been a constant battle. And I always had this fantasy in my head that if I could just get to a healthy weight, that my life would somehow, it would be okay, that people would be nice to me and they would accept me. And this is definitely a multi-fold disease. So there is like the mental obsession, the physical compulsion, the spiritual malady, and I would say also the emotional agony. And for me, the older I got, the higher the dose I needed with the food. So I remember as a child, I ate food like so slowly. I would like almost be like having a love affair with my food when I was eating it. I would just make my meals last forever. I would secret food and hoard it for months on end until it would go stale because I just needed to have it there. And then around age 10 was where it sort of switched over and I became more of a binge eater. And any time I was alone at home, I would just binge stuff, and it was easy to do that because my brother was also a food addict, but he was never big, but he was very demanding in food. So my mum just bought piles and piles of food. He was always demanding. It was very easy to secret away quite a lot of it without anyone else noticing, because they both had their own quite serious issues going on. And yeah, it was a very, very unpleasant childhood. And I was 17 and a half stone by the time I was 16 years old, which is about 240 pounds, I think. Yeah, just horribly unpleasant. And I had like these stretch marks all over my body, which was just horrendous. And my thighs had been chafing since I was like about 9 years old. That was horrendous. And then when I was nearly 19, I decided I was going to kill myself. I'd really had enough. I'd been obsessed with suicide since the age of 9. So it'd been 10 years for me. It felt like forever. And I was just like, I was done. I was going to do it. And then I saw this poster for a positive thinking course. And I did this positive thinking course, which led me into a cult for 5 years. And that saved my life because it stopped me from killing myself, but it also sort of did its own kinds of damage. And then when I left that cult, I had a brief issue with sex addiction, and then I got married, and then I got really, really, really fat, and I went up to 300 pounds, which I think is like a bit over 21 stone. And I joined Food Addicts in Recovery Anonymous, which I had been sort of flirting with for a few years, but never done properly. And with them, I lost weight very fast. I invested everything in it, and I went down from sort of 21 stone down to like 12 and a half stone in a period of 9 months. And then my estranged father died, and I went to his funeral. And it was an open casket funeral, and that triggered like a full-on mental breakdown. And at that point, my marriage fell to pieces. I was no longer able to keep my abstinence. My sponsor couldn't deal with me because I was an emotional wreck, and my life just disintegrated. It was very messy. I couldn't hold down a job anymore. My husband left me. I was diagnosed with bipolar, multiple personality disorder, emotional unstable disorder, like anxiety disorder, binge eating disorder, polycystic ovary syndrome, underactive thyroid. I just became this list of diagnoses, and nobody could treat me for anything because they couldn't treat this because of that, and they couldn't treat that because of this. And I was so chemically sensitive to all the medications that they were giving me for bipolar and the different things that had severe side effects to everything. And I wasn't getting any of the benefits. So I was never able to get my bipolar under control with medication. I've been through the psychiatric mental health system multiple times and been spat out the other side, and they just don't know what to do with me. They refuse to even see me now because they say they can't treat my bipolar and dissociative identity disorder because of my autism. And it's just they've been declared unsuitable for medication and unsuitable for psychotherapy. And I was told that I needed a minimum of 5 years intensive psychotherapy for the multiple personality disorder, but they're only allowed to give me 6 months on the NHS. And then during COVID, I lost access to all sort of mental health support. And at that point, my gallbladder decided it would be a good time to perforate and go septic. So that happened at the beginning of COVID, and they weren't aware at that time that it had perforated. That didn't become apparent until nearly 2 years later. So my surgery to remove my septic gallbladder was delayed over and over again because of COVID, not being able to do the surgeries. So I had pancreatitis multiple times, I had jaundice multiple times, I was at death's door, my mental health was absolutely horrendous. So I very narrowly came out of that the other side alive. But eventually I did manage to remove my gallbladder. And through the process of absolute hell on earth, that was definitely a dark night of my soul, I went through vigorously treating my own mental health basically during COVID and lockdown, just doing huge amounts of research, huge amounts of writing, huge amounts of facing all of my own demons. And as a result, my multiple personality disorder came out the other side more under control than it had ever been before, which was brilliant. And I think because of that, when I came across GreySheet, I was in a position where I was able to engage with it, because I would not have been able to do GreySheet when I was as unstable and as unwell as I had been before that. It would have been impossible, because I didn't know what I was doing half the time. So there'd been no way that I could commit to anything. So I got abstinent immediately, and I had an immediate relief. For me, thank you, Anna, having those weighed and measured meals set out provided me with boundaries. It provided me with a system. My autistic brain loves boundaries and systems. I'm also ADHD, so it's kind of like a bit of a combination going on there. So I kind of rebel against myself in that area, but it was really good for me having this rigorous routine, and I treated abstinence like a full-time mental health support system. I had nothing in my life, so I just invested absolutely everything in GreySheet. I did 350 meetings in 90 days. On my day 90, I started sponsoring someone who had been waiting for me to get to my 90 days. I started doing service at all the meetings. I was just booking, and I'd been timing all the way through my 90 days. I always did the phone calls. I did everything I was supposed to do. I was like this glowing, shining example of GreySheet perfection. But it didn't last, unfortunately. About a year into it, I started having quite severe health problems. So the first problem that I had was about a third of my hair fell out, and I just chopped it off to deal with that. And I lost about 100 pounds in the first year of abstinence. And then I started having issues with my digestion as a result of the complications of the gallbladder issues I'd had in the past, where I wasn't absorbing fat properly, and I wasn't absorbing fat soluble vitamins properly, and my skin started drying out. And I had my period stopped. I was losing nerve function to my bladder. My blood pressure was really low. I'd also had like several surgeries during abstinence related to gynecological issues, and then I had a tumor on my kidney which was removed, and my blood pressure crashed after that, and it was really dangerous. But it was a benign tumor, thankfully. And I got really overly emotionally attached to my sponsor, which caused me to have a complete emotional breakdown in GreySheets. And basically a confluence of things just came together, and it was all too much. I was GSR for this set of meetings. I was sponsoring 6 people. I was having all the cravings for food came back with a vengeance. And I didn't realize at the time that the reason for that was because I'd started using the gluten containing product on the GreySheet, which apparently I'm horribly allergic to. And yeah, it was a mess, and it was hell on earth trying to get abstinent again after I broke my abstinence, because I had fallen from such a high height of GreySheet perfection, and I just felt shit. I hated myself. I couldn't work with any other sponsors. I ploughed away for about 12 different sponsors. I just felt shit. And after 8 months of that hell, I left. And then I spent 8 months lying in my bed being suicidal without any sort of engagement in program before I got desperate enough to come back. And I came back after gaining 90 pounds. I'll just see if I can share some pictures in my last few minutes. Can you see that? No, okay. Oh yeah, you can see it. Okay, great. Okay. Right, so this is me age 10 when I was 10 stone. And that's at age 16 when I was 17 and a half stone. And that was when I was in a cult, where I went down to, I think, about 13 stone. And this was me, I was 24 and a half stone. That was, I think I was about 25 stone at my biggest. This was when I stopped looking at the scales because it just got too scary. This was me in GreySheet after my hair had started falling out, and I just cut it all off. You can see that my scalp kind of still showing through a bit there. That's my mum, who clearly has the same illness. And this is what happens to me at the time of the month, because I'm allergic to my own hormones. I just blow up like a balloon. So that's the state that I came into GreySheet and the state that I left GreySheet. And this is me when I was sort of at my smallest in GreySheet, about 11 and a half stone, but I was actually really unwell. And I still felt fat even when I was thin in GreySheet. And yeah, this is me sort of at my biggest, at my smallest, and when I came back. Yeah, that's that. Yep. So I've come back in, and I'm really trying to focus this time on just being abstinent. My doctor gave me a lot of strong words about what I'd done to myself the first time, because once I'd lost the weight, I got obsessed with it, and I pushed it too far, and I pushed it too hard, and I was in a hurry the first time round, and I've done myself a lot of physical health damage doing that. So this time round, I've been under clear instruction: don't eat less than 2,000 calories a day for the first year. Thank you. I'll just wrap up. And that's just because my body has been severely damaged, not because of Grey Sheet, but because of my own personal health issues in combination with the Grey Sheet. And now that I know about that, I don't think there's any way I could have avoided it the first time, because I really wasn't aware of a lot of what was going on. Now I am aware, so I'm having to prioritize being healthy and being abstinent, and then I will deal with the fact that I would ideally like to lose those 90 pounds again as I go along. But at the moment, I'm just losing weight really slowly, and I have got the peace of being abstinent again, of just having that freedom of the 3 meals a day, the weighing and measure it, and yet that works for me. I can't put anything in my body that sets off the compulsion of more. I eat really simply on the Grey Sheet, which just makes it easy for me. I tick off everything that I'm putting in every meal, and I cross it out, and it just makes it easy and avoids mistakes. And I'm grateful to be back. I don't think the Grey Sheet is perfect, but it's a tool, and I'm using it as a tool, and I'm using it, taking what works, and trying not to get overly wrapped up in the perfectionism of it all. Anyway, I'm grateful to be abstinent today. Thank you.